My name is Ava, and I'm 33 years old. After 10 brutal months, working a high-risk search and rescue contract in Alaska, all I wanted was to be home. The cold gnawed at you up there. But the thought of my 15-year-old daughter, Chloe, kept me warm. The reunion at the Colorado airport was everything I dreamed of: tears, long hugs, that feeling of finally being able to breathe again. My parents, Robert and Brenda, were there, along with my sister, Megan. On the drive home, I was buzzing with relief. I turned to Chloe, smiling. So, was the money enough? I hope that $2,500 a month was plenty for your school stuff and the college fund. Chloe just stared at me. Her face was completely blank. What college fund? The air left my lungs. In the front seat, my parents went rigid. My father's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. My sister, Megan, suddenly laughed too loudly. Oh my God. Ava, you won't believe what happened at work last week. But I wasn't listening. I was watching my mother's pale face in the rearview mirror. And I knew, to understand that moment in the car, you have to understand why I was gone. My husband, Mark, died 4 years ago. A climbing accident. One day he was here, and the next, I was a 32-year-old widow with a daughter to raise. The grief was one thing, the finances were another. I was already working as a search and rescue tech. But local work, it pays the bills. Barely. It doesn't pay for college. When the Alaska contract came up, it felt like the only answer. 10 months in a remote sector. Dangerous work. High-risk extractions. And brutal. Isolating cold. But the pay was more than I could make in 2 years back home. I sat my parents, Robert and Brenda, down in their living room. I need to do this. I told them, my hands shaking a little. It's for Chloe. For her future. My mother, Brenda, was all smiles and reassurance. Of course. Sweetheart. We would love to have Chloe stay with us. It'll be wonderful. My father, Robert, nodded. Looking serious. You go and do what you have to do. Ava. We'll hold down the fort. Don't you worry about a thing. We were specific. I was crystal clear. I've opened a new joint checking account. I explained, sliding the bank folder across the coffee table. My contract pay goes directly there. On the first of every single month, I will be sending $2,500. That's 10 payments. $25,000 total. I looked them both in the eye. This is for all of Chloe's expenses. Food. Clothes. Her track team fees. School supplies. Anything she needs. But most of it just needs to sit there. It's the start of her college fund. It's the whole reason I'm going. They agreed. My mother even hugged me, telling me how proud she was that I was being so responsible. They thanked me for trusting them. Those 10 months were the hardest of my life. You don't understand isolation until you've spent a winter in a tiny SAR outpost where the sun barely rises. The work was terrifying. We pulled people off icy ledges in whiteout conditions. Performed emergency first aid in 60-mile-an-hour winds. I saw things I'll never forget. Every night, I'd pull out a worn photo of Chloe. She was smiling, holding up a medal from her track meet. That picture was my fuel. When the cold felt like it was seeping into my bones, I'd look at that picture and think, this is for her. This is for her future. I missed her first day of sophomore year. I missed her 15th birthday. I missed her track regionals. Every month, on the first, I'd get a satellite signal just long enough to confirm the $2,500 transfer went through. I'd see the money go in. I never thought to check the withdrawals. Why would I? This was my family. That money wasn't just cash. It was 10 months of my life. It was 10 months of not hugging my daughter goodnight. It was every risk I took. Every freezing breath. All translated into a single promise. A promise for her future. And in that car, listening to my sister babble about office drama, I realized that while I was in the ice and the dark, fighting to build that promise, someone had been lighting it on fire just to keep themselves warm. The first few days, I tried to tell myself I was jet-lagged, paranoid. But the red flags were impossible to ignore. They weren't just red flags, They were giant. Waving. Crimson banners. It started with the small things. I noticed Chloe's running shoes. The ones she used for the track team. Were completely worn down. The soles were separating from the fabric. Her laptop, which she needed for school, was a secondhand clunker that took 5 minutes to boot up and kept freezing. Then I saw the big things. My father, Robert, couldn't stop talking about his new toy, a $4,000 luxury electric bike. Cuts right up the hills. Ava, he'd say, patting its seat. And my mother, Brenda, insisted on showing me their big summer project. They'd installed a new $15,000 backyard patio and a small swimming pool. We just decided we deserved to finally enjoy our retirement, she said, beaming. My sister Megan was just as bad. Flashing a new designer handbag I knew for a fact cost over $1,000. My blood went cold. I felt that icy dread I used to get in Alaska right before a storm hit. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into the joint bank account. It was all there in perfect, sickening columns. 10 deposits. $2,500 each, totaling $25,000. And then the withdrawals. One after another. $4,000 to a bike shop. $15,000 to a patio contractor. $1,000 here. $500 there. The current balance, $50. And 27 cents. The anger didn't come as a roar. It was a sharp, clinical clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. The next morning, I took Chloe for a drive. Just us. I parked at a local park, turned off the engine, and looked at her. Honey, I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm. I need you to tell me the truth about the money. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. What money? The money I sent. Chloe? The $2,500 every month. Her face crumpled. The tough 15-year-old vanished. And all I saw was my little girl, looking terrified. Grandma and Grandpa said. They said your contract had problems. She whispered, tears welling up. They said the money wasn't coming through. And that we had to tighten our belts. That having me there was a big financial burden on them. I just stared. Abuuden. I didn't want to be a problem. She sobbed. The words tumbling out. So I got a job at the coffee shop on weekends. To pay for my track fees and the laptop. She wouldn't look at me. I needed it for school. Mom. It was for the graphic design class. Chloe. I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Your laptop was secondhand. Your track shoes are falling apart. Where did the money go? She looked down at her hands. The laptop was. It was more than I thought. I didn't have enough from my paychecks. So I sold Dad's guitar. The world stopped. Mark's vintage guitar. The one he'd played her lullabies on. The last, most important piece of him we had left. She sold it to pay for a laptop, while my parents were swimming in their new pool. I pulled her into a hug, my entire body shaking with a rage, so cold it burned. And I finally understood. This was worse than theft. This was psychological abuse. They had put my child in an impossible position, making her feel guilty for existing. They hadn't just stolen her money, they had stolen her security. This is a classic, cruel manipulation. It's called the burden trap. You make a child feel like a financial and emotional drain. You make them feel like their very presence is a problem to be solved. You don't just take their resources, you make them thankful for the scraps you leave behind. Chloe wasn't just being a good kid by getting a job. She was a victim, manipulated into a state of learned helplessness, desperately trying to pay for her own space in a home that should have been her sanctuary. I held her as she cried, and I made a silent promise. The pain I felt in that moment, it was clarifying. It wasn't sadness. It was fuel. I knew exactly what I had to do. The time for being a trusting daughter was over. It was time to be a mother. The pain I felt wasn't a fire, it was ice. It didn't make me want to scream. It made me want to move. When I was in Alaska, you didn't panic during a whiteout. You didn't curse the storm. You checked your gear. You read your map. And you moved with methodical, cold precision. You focused on the next right step. And then the one after that. I put Chloe to bed, assuring her that none of this was her fault. That I was proud of her. That I would handle it. But I didn't go to sleep. I went to my laptop. The anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was an audit. My first call wasn't to my parents. It was to my SAR team's employee assistance program. They had resources for high-stress situations. I was in one. I explained the situation calmly. Factually. Financial exploitation of a minor. By 10 a.m. the next morning. I was on a video call with a civil attorney they recommended. He was all business. Do you have proof of the agreement, proof of transfer, proof of the expenditures? I will, I said. For the next 2 days, I became a ghost in their house. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just gathered. I downloaded and printed every single bank statement from the joint account. I highlighted every transfer in from my paycheck. And every transfer out to the patio company, the luxury bike shop, and the cash withdrawals. I took pictures. I took a photo of the $15,000 pool. I took a photo of my father's $4,000 e-bike. I took a photo of Megan's new designer handbag, left carelessly on the kitchen counter. Then, I went into Chloe's room and took a photo of her running shoes, the soles held together with duct tape. I took a photo of the pawn shop ticket she had hidden in her desk drawer, the one for her father's guitar. I drove to the coffee shop and got a printout of Chloe's work schedule for the last 10 months. Every Saturday, every Sunday. I put it all into a folder. This wasn't revenge. This was accounting. My final move was strategic. Thanksgiving was in 3 days. My mother was already planning her perfect, happy family turkey dinner. I picked up the phone and called my Aunt Cynthia, my father's older sister, the family matriarch, the only person my father, Robert, was genuinely afraid of. She was a woman who valued 2 things, integrity and family legacy. My parents had just spit on both. Aunt Cynthia, I said, my voice bright and warm. I'm so glad I'm home. We're all having Thanksgiving at Mom and Dad's. I haven't seen you in so long. It would mean the world to me and Chloe if you could be there. She was delighted. She promised she wouldn't miss it. The plan was set. All the pieces were in place. I opened my laptop one last time and created a new PowerPoint presentation. I kept it simple. Black text on a white background. I inserted the bank statements. I inserted the photos. The pool next to the pawn ticket. The e-bike next to the duct-taped shoes. Calm. Factual. Lethal. Thanksgiving dinner was a surreal performance. My mother, Brenda, was the perfect host, bustling around with the turkey. My father, Robert, carved it, making bad jokes. My sister, Megan, kept asking me superficial questions about Alaska, her eyes never quite meeting mine. And Chloe, my brave Chloe, sat next to me, quiet and strong. She knew the plan. Then came dessert. My mother brought out her famous pumpkin pie. Before we have pie, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Everyone stopped. Ooh. I put together a little slideshow. About my 10 months away. It'll just take a minute. In the living room, they were confused. But they agreed. How lovely, my mother said, forcing a smile. We all gathered in the living room. Chloe sat on the sofa. And I stood by the TV. I plugged my laptop in. The big screen flickered to life. My father chuckled. All right. Let's see these glaciers. Ava. I clicked the first slide. There were no glaciers, just black text on a white screen. It read, Coles College Fund $25,000. You could have heard a pin drop. My father's smile froze. My mother's hand went to her throat. I just wanted to walk everyone through my finances. I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. A simple accounting of the 10-month contract. I clicked to the next slide. On the left, deposit April 1st. $2,500. On the right, a picture of my father's brand new $4,000 electric bike. Dad, you said you got that with your retirement savings. I said quietly. Now, Ava, you don't understand. He started, his voice blustering. I clicked again. Deposit May 1st. $2,500. On the right, a photo of my sister Megan, smiling at a restaurant, holding up her new designer handbag. Megan just stared, her face ashen. I clicked again. Deposits. June. July. August. $7,500. On the right, a bright, sunny photo of the new $15,000 pool and patio. The one I'd taken 2 days ago. A choked sound came from my mother. I clicked one last time. The screen split into two. On the left, the receipt from the pawn shop for Mark's guitar. On the right, the photo of Chloe's running shoes, the gray duct tape clearly visible on the toes. And this, I said, my voice shaking just once, is what Chloe was left with while she was working every weekend to buy her own laptop. Because you told her I was failing. My Aunt Cynthia, who had been watching this, all in stony silence, turned her head slowly. Her gaze on my father was withering. "Robert?" she asked. Her voice was terrifyingly soft. We deserved it," my father suddenly burst out, his face purple. "We're retired, we've worked hard all our lives, we deserved a few nice things. Childcare isn't free. You know, I would have paid you," I said, my voice like steel. "I would have paid you anything. But you didn't ask. You stole. You stole from her." And that's when I finally understood. This wasn't just about greed. It was about something deeper. It was the empty wallet power fantasy. My parents felt invisible in their retirement. They felt like their status was gone. That money, my money, Chloe's money, wasn't just for a pool. It was a temporary hit of power. It made them feel important, successful, even if it was all a lie. Bought with their granddaughter's future. It was pathetic. You don't know what you're talking about," my mother, Brenda, sobbed. She was backed into a corner. And she did what cornered animals do. She attacked someone weaker. She rounded on my sister, Megan, who was silently crying. "It was her," my mother shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. "It was Megan, she started it. She came to us with a $5,000 loan from some online business. She was desperate. And she convinced us, just borrow the first 2 payments. She said, Ava will never know. It was her." My sister looked up, her face a mask of absolute betrayal. The room was silent. The truth was finally out. Not just a theft, but a conspiracy, and it had a starting point. Her name was Megan. The Thanksgiving dinner didn't just end, it imploded. Aunt Cynthia stood up, her face carved from granite. She looked at my father, then my mother, then Megan. "What you have done," she said, her voice shaking with a controlled rage, "is not just a mistake. It is a disgrace. It is unforgivable. And Robert, you will fix this. You will fix this. Or I will personally testify against all 3 of you in a court of law. Am I clear?" My father, a man I'd never seen shrink, just nodded, unable to look her in the eye. The power in the room had shifted permanently. The rest of the family, the cousins and uncles, just filed out, their eyes down, as if escaping a toxic spill. The next day was not a family chat. It was a formal mediation. We didn't meet at their house. We met at my lawyer's conference room. Me, Chloe, and Aunt Cynthia on one side of the polished table, my father, my mother, and Megan on the other. Milaver, Mr. Harrison, was all business. He placed the folder I'd prepared. Now, a formal legal document. In the center of the table, my client is prepared to file a civil suit for financial exploitation, fraud, and emotional distress. He stated calmly, "Given the evidence, which is incontrovertible, we are confident a judge would not only grant full restitution but also punitive damages. And, frankly," he added, "I see no reason why the district attorney's office wouldn't be interested in the fraud aspect." My father's face was gray. My mother was silently weeping. Megan looked like a terrified child. The empty wallet power fantasy was gone. The pool, the bike, all those cheap symbols of their imaginary status had vanished, leaving only the hard, ugly reality of their choices. They weren't a successful retired couple. They were common thieves. "Ava," my mother whispered, "please, We're your family. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just clarity. You stopped being my family when you taught my daughter to feel like a burden. I said, you stopped when you let her sell her father's guitar. This is not a family discussion. This is a transaction. You are debtors. The surrender was total. The fight was gone. Mr. Harrison slid the prepared documents across the table. A legally binding restitution agreement. It was simple. Robert and Brenda would take out an immediate home equity loan against their house, the one with the new pool, to repay the $20,000 they had stolen from Chloe's fund. The transfer was to be initiated within 48 hours. Megan was separate. As the instigator, her debt was personal. She would sign a promissory note for the $5,000 she'd borrowed. With an aggressive repayment schedule personally supervised by Aunt Cynthia, my parents and sister sat there. Ben's in Hunt. Looking at the end of their lives as they knew it. They signed every page. My father's signature was shaky. My mother's was smudged with tears. There were no hugs. No, I'm sorries. I stood up, took Chloe's hand, and we walked out. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. Incoming wire transfer $20,000. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an audit being closed. A balance sheet, finally. Painfully. Zeroed out, Chloe and I moved out of that house 2 days later. We found a small, clean apartment across town. It was mostly empty. Just a couple of air mattresses and boxes. But it felt light. It felt safe. The first thing I did, before I even bought us furniture, was take that $20,000 check and go to the pawn shop. The owner remembered Chloe. He saw me walk in, looked at the cash in my hand, and went to the back room without a word. He came out carrying the worn guitar case. I opened it. Mark's guitar. I ran my hand over the wood. And for the first time since I'd gotten home, I let myself cry. I paid the man, thanking him, and walked out carrying that piece of our past. That piece of him. When I brought it home to Chloe, she just hugged me. And I knew we were going to be okay. Healing isn't a single event. It's a process. It's a million small, intentional steps. Chloe started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal and the guilt they had forced on her. I found a new job. A local SAR position. It paid a lot less than the Alaska contract. But it meant I was home every night. It meant I could be there for her track meets and help her with homework. I had gone to the ice to earn money. But I realized what Chloe needed wasn't a college fund. It was her mother. My parents are paying the loan. The house with the pool is now a financial prison for them. Megan is paying her $5,000 back to Aunt Cynthia in small, humiliating installments. I get texts from them sometimes. My mother, Brenda, sends long, rambling apologies about how she doesn't know what got into her. My father, Robert, sends angry, defensive messages about how I've torn the family apart. I don't reply. I used to think that family was an unconditional word. That blood meant you owed someone endless forgiveness. Endless second chances. I thought that letting go was an act of failure. Now I understand. Sometimes, the most courageous act of love is to build a boundary. It's to make the painful admission that the people you're supposed to trust are the source of the wound. Letting go of the idea of who your family should be is the only way to protect the family you actually have. My loyalty isn't to my past with them. It's to my future with my daughter. That decision wasn't about vengeance. It was about choosing to stop the rot. To finally find myself and my daughter in the wreckage. Have you ever had to make that difficult choice, the one between your blood relatives and your own peace of mind? Let me know your experience in the comments. And share how you learned to build your own boundaries.